Okay,
No, you're not in a hot seat.
Hello, welcome to the Reopen America podcast. This is Chris Nelson. It is May 16th, 2020, and this is the most exciting interview that I have done so far by a long shot. Kimberlee Falkenstine is here for her very first interview she has done since getting arrested on Miami Beach. Also, her attorney, Cory Strolla, has joined me. How are you doing today?
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. Now, Kimberlee, let me just ask, how are you doing? You look great.
I am great. Everything is really well right now with us.
That's awesome. You're out of jail. That is absolutely great. Now, a lot of people saw that video. I mean, that video is about 71,000 views and going. It inspired people all over the world. And can you just tell people what inspired you to do what you did?
Well, I guess a lot of people around our state and around our nation just doing really unmistakable acts of standing right now inspired me. But really, I was kind of inspired by just wanting to make a stand that was unmistakable, to let people know, to remind them that they're free, and to remind them that the power lies with the people, not with politicians, not with, local authorities. And I just felt like that, I'm a woman of action, and I had sat back for weeks now and kind of watched this unfold. And I felt like I had just day after day witnessed more and more overstepping by our government, overstepping by local authorities. And I felt like it really just disempowered the people. And I wanted to remind people that, they serve at our pleasure. And anything that they do that overreaches and tramples on our constitutional rights and our freedoms must be met head on, must be addressed. And I wanted to encourage people to do that and to know that it is their right and it is our duty to do that.
Absolutely. Now, you're a former law enforcement officer yourself, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And did you think that they were going to arrest you?
Obviously I knew it was a possibility. I did not go into it expecting that it would for sure happen. But I definitely recognized that if I chose to step on that beach, it was a possibility it could happen.
Okay. Now, 71,000 views, people coming all out of the woodwork from all over the world saying, wow, this inspired you. Do you believe that you accomplished what you set out to do?
I really appreciate the amount of attention that we have brought to this cause and helping to highlight what's really going on here. The overstep by government and the trampling of our rights and our freedoms right now. But I do kind of view what happened on the beach as the beginning and not as the goal accomplished, but just started. And there's a lot more to do.
Okay, now you were you frightened at all when you were walking out there? Now, I want to note that as far as conversations that you had with the police or with the lifeguards or anything like that, that there is an ongoing case still going on. And I want to talk to you about this, Cory. So some of those things we can't really touch on, but let me ask you, were you afraid when you were walking out there? Did this scare you at all?
I definitely had to deal with some fear leading up to that weekend as I began to realize what could happen. I have only ever had very positive interactions with law enforcement. Obviously, I love and stand for police in general, but just the very idea of being in a situation where they might see me at odds with them, yeah, that there was definitely fear that I had to deal with. But by the time I walked out on that beach, I was completely at peace.
That is awesome. And you have a strong faith in God, correct? Did that faith in God and your Christianity, did that inspire you to do what you did?
Yes, I am first and foremost a Christian. I mean, when it comes to who and what I am, that's the main answer right there. So I live life and I view the world through that lens, and definitely a lot of prayer went into my actions and went into my words that I had with officers and with whoever I contacted that day, and uh, I just felt that the Lord answered prayer and made himself powerful through that entire ordeal. And it was amazing to see.
Now, what would you say to people that might say, oh, it's just the beach? Why make such a big deal about the beach? What would you say to people who ask that?
Well, first of all, I can only speak for me personally, but it was never about a beach. I mean, I believe that the beaches are super important. I think that, being out in God's creation, being out in the sunshine, enjoying our freedom is not only great for us physically, but also mentally. But it was never about a beach in particular. Like I said, if people look at what happened and only see that, then they don't see the scope of what we're fighting here. This is a fight for freedom. And yes, I do believe that eventually things will be opened back up and all restrictions will be removed. We're not going to stop fighting until that is accomplished. But at the same time, if nothing else, then for future reference, those who are in power need to remember something, that when they come at us and they take our freedoms and they trample on our rights, they will be met head on with resistance. It might be peaceful resistance, but we are not going to stand by and let that slide.
Oh, and I mean, I saw you. I was the one videoing. I saw you out there holding up your sign. I watched as the beach patrol approached you. Then it looked like they were backing off. And then I watched as they came over and told me, you can see it all in the video, that they were going to call the police on you. And then the police walked over, and as everybody saw in the video, they walked down, and then you stood your ground. What was going through your mind as you were sitting there holding up your sign, waiting to see what was going to happen?
Honestly, I was just having a really good time. I had prayed that the Lord would just give me peace and give me joy, his joy throughout this whole process. And of course, I prayed for whatever officers would come in contact with me if that ended up happening, and that I would just be able to, that they would be able to see, God's love through that interaction and not any sort of personal attack. And I believe that was accomplished, and I'm very fond of the interaction that I had with everyone that day.
Amen.
On that count.
Amen. You're a family woman. You're married with kids, and do you want to tell us a little bit about your background? Who is Kimberlee?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned earlier, I mean, first and foremost, I am Christian. Our family, we are a Christian family. We raise our kids that way. My husband, I was a police officer in Texas. I was commissioned for 7 years before the military moved me and my family to Belgium. We've been to several duty stations since then, and my husband is currently stationed at Homestead Air Reserve Base. And he's a captain in the U.S. Army. He's amazing at his job. And I have 3 kids, 11, 8, and 5. And I homeschool them.
That is awesome. So you're not somebody who is running around breaking laws and getting in police officers' faces or anything like that.
No, and I'm not going to be. I don't break laws.
Awesome. Now, Cory, I want to get into a little bit of the legal ramifications here. Now, I want to know, can you, and either one of you, feel free to step in and answer this, because I want listeners to know everything that happened there. Can you speak on anything with the interactions with the police officers? Was Kimberlee roughed up in any way? Was there any police misconduct there? Can you speak on that?
The only misconduct that we're alleging is the fact that they were enforcing an unconstitutional and unjust executive order. And then they further compounded that issue by placing her under arrest for resisting an officer without violence and trespassing. Both of those are first-degree misdemeanors, punishable up to 1 year in the county jail on each count. So that's 2 years. Then she has the violation of the governor's executive order, which is a second-degree misdemeanor, punishable by up to 60 days in jail. So based on the officer's, we'll call it discretion, or I would call it lack of discretion for a better term, she's facing 2 years and 60 days in a Dade County jail for upholding her First Amendment constitutional God-given right to peacefully assemble and have redress against the government. If you look at the First Amendment, it was the first thing our founding fathers thought was the most important foundation to our country. We had just fought a war against a tyrannical government and king. That's the First Amendment that they created that said God has given us these rights as a born free American.
All right, back now. Had a little technical glitch there. I guess Cory's phone got a little too hot there. Now you guys are sitting right on the beach, correct?
Yeah, we're sitting outside of the town of Palm Beach right over here. We thought it would be appropriate, but when we tried to step outside, there was just too many people, which is good. Everyone's walking by, but there's some construction down the way. So we had to resume in the mobile office.
Yeah, I love doing things in my car. Like most of the videos I shoot are in my car because I'm riding around all the time, driving here and there with what's been going on recently. And yeah, so Cory, you were talking about the constitutionality of going to the beach, and I'm very fascinated with this because I actually had a whole article sent to me by another attorney about the constitutionality of going to the beach. And actually, after Kimberlee was arrested and I walked back to the Reopen South Florida rally, I read this. I announced what had happened and read this to everybody. Could you continue to speak a little more on the constitutionality of the beach?
No, absolutely. What I was saying is that we have certain rights that are given to us and are granted to us as free Americans, where the government is actually restrained by the law, not the people. And to actually have her arrested and approached by 4 officers, it's not like she was creating havoc. It's not like she was making noise and throwing things, having a tantrum. She literally was standing on a free public beach with a sign, silently protesting, and it took 4 law enforcement officers to place her in handcuffs and take her off. And what I was saying is they did it on the basis of Governor DeSantis's executive order closing the beaches down. And I'm not sure if your listeners are familiar, just about 48 hours ago, the Wisconsin Supreme Court struck down their governor's statewide executive orders as unconstitutional and unjust. And I wish it would have done right before Kimberlee's protest because it would have given her more credibility, but it couldn't have helped us anymore. I mean, that's going to be the number one cause I'm going to cite to Catherine Rundle, who's the elected state attorney in Dade County, to get these ridiculous 3 criminal charges dismissed against her.
Now, where do you stand with that? Do you have a court appearance coming up?
We will. I've already entered a plea of not guilty on her behalf because I will not let her enter a plea of guilty as she did not violate any laws. And what people need to realize, because some of these comments regarding Kimberlee were ludicrous in terms of people that don't understand the law. You are not guilty of resisting an officer without violence if it is an unjust law or the officer is giving you an unlawful command. So when he's ordering her to get off the beach at the order of the governor, which is an unlawful order, and it will be struck down as unlawful, she can't resist arrest without violence because it's an unlawful command. So she didn't trespass. She didn't resist without violence. She literally committed no criminal violation under the U.S. Constitution and the Florida Constitution, along with any Florida statute they want to cite. So we will have a pending criminal case coming up, but because Dade County is still closed, that court date is just unknown at this time.
Okay, so they're not having any court dates right now.
Not right now, unless it's deemed essential, where if Kimberlee was still in custody and I had to go to the judge to get her a bond, they would have that. But if it's a non-essential hearing, they are not having court.
Kimberlee, you're still non-essential. How do you feel about that?
Oh, everyone's essential, Chris. You know that.
Oh, brother. This gets, I mean, the arrest and everything is serious and it's horrible, but there gets to be a point where this stuff gets almost comical. It can't have you in because, it's non-essential. Now, Cory, you are doing a similar lawsuit to what was filed in Wisconsin against Governor DeSantis' stay-at-home order, correct?
Correct. I actually filed for an emergency federal injunction because our contention is he's violating our Bill of Rights and he's violating the U.S. Constitution, not just relying on an unlawful state statute. So we filed in federal court, and what kind of amazes me is the governor's office didn't even file an answer. They didn't even respond and deny it. What they said is they filed a motion to dismiss to say that our client, who is a 61-year-old grandmother bartender, she used to own a bar in West Virginia. She's been in the bar business her entire life. Unfortunately, because of the governor's order, she's lost all of her employment for 2 months now. They said that she lacked standing in jurisdiction in federal court, that her rights weren't being violated. And less than 72 hours after they filed their motion, the governor filed at 8 o'clock at night on Monday. And before lunch on Wednesday, the federal judge, Judge Singal, granted their motion to dismiss. And by local rule, we had 7 days to file a response, and he waited less than 72 hours. So we are in the process now of trying to appeal that to the 11th Circuit in Atlanta to say that even the judge violated the local rules. He didn't give us a hearing. He didn't even let us respond, and he completely violated our client's due process rights.
Wow. So you've got a lot of work cut out for you right now. And, oh my goodness. God bless you. I hope you have a good legal team working on this around the clock. And
we've got some good minds. We've got some good minds and some strong patriots behind this.
Good. So that's going to be what, in another 3 days, or when could we get news on that? And possibly having Florida's stay-at-home order stricken down, and how will that affect Kimberlee's case?
Well, there are some current cases pending before the Supreme Court. There are some now. Other jurisdictions are finally getting it. We couldn't believe that we were the first people to file against the governor. And we only did it after phase 1, where he kept all of South Florida closed and opened up the rest of the state, which was completely unconstitutional and arbitrary at the very definition of the word. Now you've got people that bars are still closed, tattoo parlors are still closed, while you have hair salons open. Again, it's this arbitrary picking and choosing of almost a king who decides who gets to live and who gets to die. And you literally have families suffering and Floridians suffering who have not gone back to work or got paychecks in 2 months. And it's literally just an arbitrary of, okay, you can open, you stay closed. So I foresee that these emergency orders are probably going to get struck down, especially based on the precedent by Wisconsin. And I never thought in my almost 25 years of being in the legal field that I would say that the state of Wisconsin was light years ahead of the state of Florida on constitutional law. Like I almost fell out of my office chair when the order came down, and it came down literally just hours after the federal judge struck my lawsuit. And I thought that was way too much of a coincidence.
Wow. Now, when that gets struck down, will everything just go back to normal? Is it like in Wisconsin right now? Does all this craziness and restrictions and everything just immediately get lifted?
Well, and what Wisconsin said is that the power can go to the individual counties or cities, that you can't just have one person, whether it be a governor, whether it be a secretary, cabinet member, create these statewide executive orders, that's unjust, that it never went before their legislature, which if you put it in our terms, our Congress, our representatives in Florida never sat down in Tallahassee and passed these laws. It came directly from one person, the governor. So I foresee that other states are going to follow suit very quickly. But then I think what's going to happen is these towns or counties or cities are going to have to start enforcing it. And it's funny that we're sitting on Palm Beach with Kimberlee, because we just had an amazing Palm Beach County Commission where they voted by majority, no restrictions to open up beaches. And yet the town of Palm Beach is refusing to open their beaches as a town entity because it's not a county beach, it's a town of Palm Beach. So Miami Beach could do the same thing. And it's just, I don't see it going back to normal, but what I don't want to see is, like Kimberlee said, this isn't the end, this is the beginning. And people really need to rally and follow her lead and stand up to these unjust orders and these unjust laws.
Amen. And going back to you, Kimberlee, and this not being over, what do you have planned for the future? People are asking me this like crazy.
I'm kind of taking that one day at a time, but definitely I feel no less urgent the need to act and the need to make a stand. Coming up next Saturday, I believe it's the 23rd, there are some ladies organizing a beach rally. It's going to be back at the same beach that I was at on Mother's Day. And all the details haven't been hammered out yet. We'll probably have a flyer that's ready to post by the end of the weekend. And we'll post that on all of the reopen pages. But they've just they're working on organizing just a really great get together on the beach where free people can go out there and enjoy themselves, maybe play some volleyball and maybe wear your swimsuit if you want. And everyone can just have a good time and peacefully demonstrate their freedom. And so that's what's coming up. And we encourage anyone who wants to go on the beach or who just wants to show up and demonstrate their freedom in the way that they see fit to join us. We're going to have a great time.
So there it is on the 23rd. And I hear a lot from people that want to go out on the beach. There's, of course, some fear. I mean, who on earth wants to get arrested and could a criminal charge end up with somebody, say, losing their job or things like that? What do you say to people that might be like, yeah, I want to stand up for my rights, but I don't want to get arrested. What do you say to that?
Well, I don't want to speak on behalf of Kimberlee, but I'm sure she feels the same way. We are not advocating for people to put themselves in jeopardy. Everyone has to be comfortable with their decision. And as Kimberlee stated before, she really put her trust and faith in God. And she was led down that path and she was comfortable with it and she was at peace with it. So, and the one thing we want to stress is please don't resist officers with violence or abuse. Yes, some of these officers are not using what I would call rational discretion. They claim they're just following orders and following the law. And sadly, they took the same oath to uphold the Constitution that Kimberlee did when she was a law enforcement officer, that her husband did in the military. Every single officer throughout the state of Florida swore an oath to the Constitution and not politicians and not unjust laws. So I would put the word out there to anybody who's in law enforcement to please re-examine the oath that you took and use your discretion. These officers can call in, and we have good reason to believe that the officers that arrested Kimberlee actually contacted either their higher ups or even the state attorney's office personally to figure out how to charge her, what to charge her. And if that's the case, it upsets me even more because the state attorney's office has full discretion to prosecute and could have easily said, hey, you got her off the beach. She wasn't uncooperative. She was very pleasant. She was very respectful. Give her what's called a citation or a notice to appear. And these officers chose to put her in handcuffs and drag her into the Dade County Jail, where they're actually releasing criminals because they're afraid of COVID-19. And yet they brought her to that facility even after speaking with their higher ups, their sergeants, their captains, the state. It boggles my mind. So again, we're not advocating for people to violate the law or go get arrested. Everyone has their own free will, but we want to please put out there at any of these rallies, don't be disrespectful to law enforcement. Even if they're not upholding their oath to the Constitution, they have a job to do. The people have a job to do in peacefully protesting. And I know that's exactly what Kimberlee did, and that's exactly what Kimberlee wants.
Amen. And I just, right before I got on with you, I spoke to my contact at Fort Lauderdale Police Department, who told me that they would warn people to get off the beach if people did decide to do a beach protest in Fort Lauderdale. That she told me, Chris, I don't want to be arresting anybody. But if people refuse to leave, she would issue some type of order to appear. But she told me they wouldn't be cuffing people and hauling them off like they did to you in Miami. I thought that was disgusting how they did that. So I just wanted to add that. But as far as I followed it as you, Kimberlee, were. I was trying to find out when you were getting out, what the status was, and I don't know if Cory has to answer this, but you were booked into the Dade County Jail, like he said, and then finally, somebody had to pay your bail, and then you were released. I guess it was after midnight.
You lose track of time in there. But I want to say it was between 2 and 3 a.m. that my husband picked me up, and I was able to go outside of the jail and get in the truck. Tara Hill with Reopen Florida, she got in contact with my husband while I was in jail, and it was just such a blessing to him, come alongside him and helped him realize that he is supported. And then she offered to post my bail, which just was just such a blessing to us. And also she helped my husband get in touch with Mr. Strolla, who was so gracious to offer his services pro bono to help me. And we've just been blown away by the support, and we're very thankful. And yeah, it's been amazing.
Amen. That is awesome. Now, how can people help you out, Kimberlee? I've had people message me from United Kingdom, from Canada, from Australia, from France. We're thank you, Kimberlee. We're watching you, Kimberlee. I'm sure you've gotten a lot of messages too. How can people help you moving forward, Kimberlee?
Well, I mean, honestly, first of all, just thank you to all the people who have been sending messages of support. I will say that probably 99.9% of what I've been personally receiving has been just nothing but supportive. And, honestly, I didn't expect that going in, and it's been really incredible to see people rally around us like that. So I'm very thankful. If people wish to help out in a financial way, I think that they can look for reopenfl at gmail.com on PayPal. Miss Tara Hill, she's a woman of integrity, and she will make sure that those funds are used to help with this cause. Those were the types of funds that were used to help me pay my bail to get out of jail. So yeah, if anyone wants to help out in that way, then that's where I would send them.
Fantastic. Kimberlee Falkenstine, Cory Strolla, thank you so much for joining me today on the Reopen America podcast.
Thanks for having us. We really
Thank you.
appreciate your time, and we really appreciate getting out this message, because, like, I want to stress what Kimberlee said. She was not the end. She was just the beginning, and a lot of people need to start standing their ground, because if we don't fight for our rights now, unfortunately, we're going to go into what the government is calling a new normal, and that's accepting unconstitutional laws, and that can never happen in this country.
Amen. I'm with you 100%. All right. Well, if you want to hear all of the latest news, the latest stories, the latest interviews, and everything Reopen America, subscribe to the Reopen America podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, also on YouTube and iHeartRadio. And of course, these videos go on Facebook, all over the place. And thank you so much for joining us today, and keep up the fight to reopen America. This is Chris Nelson. Thanks for listening.